Okay, no worries. The idea was to get you guys because our experience tells us that there is some minor hiccups that might be faced by the students while trying to log in, and that's why we make it a point that whenever we start a batch, we should just make maximum people access the app immediately, and then later on minor issues can be taken care of. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, so this class is about polity, governance, its introduction, and laying out the basic thought process which will help us guide the polity and governance when it will start in your GS Foundation batch. As of now, we are starting with geography, 3 hours of geography classes by Gaurav sir every day. And after it is done, then I will take up your polity and governance. Let me introduce myself. My name is Vaibhav Mishra, and I'm going to teach you polity and governance both for prelims as well as mains examination. Uh, Polity is something that probably all of us have a brief idea about. So that's the problem that I, as a teacher of polity, face everywhere. So when students come to me, they obviously have a little bit of exposure to what constitution is and what is parliament. So people already know basics about polity, correct? Uh, because more often than not, this is a conventional, traditional knowledge that when you start preparing, Lakshmikant to padni hai, everyone knows. And even before people start preparing, they might not have other books, but they have Lakshmikant with them. Do you have? How many people already have Lakshmikant with them? Yeah. See? So in that sense, my job is easier because you guys already have read, tried to read, British acts, regulating act. आपको पता होता है, and preamble. People have knowledge about what preamble is. While that would be an easier job as a polity teacher, that makes my job difficult because when you start reading on your own without proper guidance, then obviously most of the understanding that you get from Lakshmikant more often than not is not mainly suited for the UPSC civil service examination, because it needs a mentor or a teacher to tell you what should be read and to what level, to what extent it should be read. A basic distinction that I can draw as of now is that for polity and governance, especially for prelims and basic understanding, our core resource is going to be the Bare Act. So what is the Bare Act? The original constitutional text. So we'll talk about that text as of now, and we will see how we'll use them. I will make you download the PDF, which we will refer very often. Because when students read Lakshmikant, Lakshmikant is a beautifully written book which has everything that is required, especially for prelims examination. The problem is that it is not the Constitution of India. Whereas if you look at the questions that have been asked in the prelims examination, the question is framed as, according to the Constitution of India, which one of the following statement is or incorrect? The problem is you have not read the Constitution of India. You have just read Lakshmikant, and Lakshmikant is not the Constitution of India, and that creates a problem. So what I want to say is that until we start with polity, you have to give me in writing as a guarantee that you are not going to read polity until we start polity. Is my voice low for everyone or just for Arushi? Am I audible? Am I better audible now? Yeah? Okay. All right. So the idea is to talk about the polity, to cover few topics today, just to get you started as to what is the flavor of polity, how are we going to cover it, correct? Before I go into syllabus, let me first introduce the subject to you. Polity as a subject has been branching from the mother subject, that is political science and international relations. So you can see that PSIR itself is a combination of two very different subjects. One is political science and another one is international relation. Political science, or the subject or study of political science, is concerned with the distribution of power in the society, how the power is distributed in the society. So what does power means? Can anyone tell us what is the meaning and understanding of the word power? So when we refer to a person that this person is really powerful, ये तो बहुत powerful लोग हैं यार, क्या मतलब होता है उसका? आपको तो कोई political science की. So the idea is to raise your hands and then I will ask you to unmute yourself, right? Okay, now raise your hand. Yes, Jatin. Okay, let's not go into power and authority. Power and authority are two different things. But I guess, yeah, you have some idea about who's powerful. Nandana? Okay. Yeah. Shivani? Yeah, it is ability to influence or change other person's actions. Yes, Roja, you raise your hands. You are muted, Roja. Okay. Divyansh? Okay. Yeah, so you sort of have some understanding about. So when I was referring to the really powerful people we know in the society, more often than not, we understand power as the power to decision making, which means that getting things done which otherwise would not have been possible without the powerful person taking an action. So, for example, let's say my mother is getting transferred, my father is being transferred, and he does not wants to go there because the family is here. And now the idea is to get in touch with the powerful people to get them called to the department and then getting the transferred cancelled. Because if the transfer is cancelled, then the person is powerful. So the definition of power is that a person A will be known as powerful if after his application of power over B, the things that he gets to manage and gets done by B otherwise would not have been possible. So that is the understanding of power. Getting things done which otherwise would not have been done is. So last year when Mukesh Ambani organized his son's countless events of marriage, in one of the events, the power was highlighted in no uncertain terms. He decided to conduct the marriage function in Jamnagar, where he has the world's largest petroleum refinery. Now, there is an airport in Jamnagar, and that is an Indian Air Force base. So, which means that civilian aircrafts are not allowed. And that is strategically the most important airport for Indian Air Force because that is closest to the Pakistan border. So any action from Karachi airport and Karachi Air Force station towards Mumbai and towards our western coasts will be first countered from Jamnagar Indian Air Force base station. But it was Mukesh Ambani, and he had invited the dignitaries from all across the globe, and they wanted to fly in their chartered planes directly to Jamnagar. Never in the history of Jamnagar airport that a civilian aircraft has ever landed. And then suddenly in the morning, you see a notification by Airport Authority of India that for next 10 days, the Indian Air Force base station will be an international civilian airport only for 10 days. And in middle of those 10 days, there is an event of Ambani family. And that's when the billionaires, the most famous people across the globe, were directly able to fly to Jamnagar. This is what power looks like when it is applied in real life. Why Mukesh Ambani is powerful? Because without the application of his power over Airport Authority of India or central government, do you think Jamnagar Airport would ever become a civilian airport? No. There is no way that Jamnagar airport could ever be accessible to civilians. When it was made accessible to civilians, not just Indian civilians, it was made accessible to foreigners, international travelers, and only for a specific period of 9 days. Political science and polity deals into these kinds of human associations which decide the distribution of power in the society. It is interested to know what is power, how it's manifested. It is also interested to know what are the different aspects in which the power can be organized in a society. One of the ways in which the power can be organized in the society is through a very, very peculiar technical term that is known as state. And when I write the state, I do not mean state government. I do not mean Andhra Pradesh. I do not mean Uttar Pradesh or Tamil Nadu. State is a proper political term which has a very different understanding, which we will talk about. So, one of the ways in power can be organized is through the state formation. So there are different kinds of state. There are states which don't like when you smile, like authoritarian and totalitarian states, dictators, correct? So for example, the state of North Korea and its leader has designated 6 kind of hairstyles that you can keep. So there the power is organized in such a monopolistic way that you are not allowed to keep the hairs that you want to. You are not allowed to access internet. The same state is organized in a very different way when you talk about Indian society or India. Correct? So there are different kinds of state. Now, when it comes to the GS syllabus, the concern is just to understand the state of India. For GS, the idea is to understand how the power is distributed in Indian state. So in Indian state, the power is distributed by the Constitution of India to the legislature. The power to make laws, that is also a power. Power to execute those laws have been given to the government, the executive. And power to decide whether the application of power by the legislature and executive has been done in a right way or not is given to an independent judiciary. That is the sole and core concern of UPSC GS syllabus largely, to understand the state of India and how the power has been distributed between legislature, executive and judiciary. The work of the legislature is to make laws. The job of the executive is to execute those laws. And the job of the judiciary is to see whether the laws are being made properly or not, and to see whether the execution of the laws is being done properly or improperly. Is this making sense to everyone? So for GS purposes, our understanding largely will be revolving around the understanding of complex provisions of the Constitution of India to finally arrive at the good understanding of how the Constitution works, how the legislature works, how the executive works. Legislature does not works, that we know. So we'll have to understand as to why legislature doesn't work. Then why executive is so powerful, and how judiciary, instead of its role being given to execute, to scrutinize the executive and legislative actions, is not being able to done the job properly. So that is the whole, largely that is like a 60 to 70% of the syllabus. Apart from that, the Constitution of India has also created 2 levels of government. One is the central government and another one is the state government. So we will have to understand the distribution of power between the center and the state. So you can see again it is all about power, right? What is the power of Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, or what is the power of Maharashtra Chief Minister? What is the power of Prime Minister? So again, you can see it comes down to the same point, understanding how the power is distributed between the central level legislature, central level executive, central level judiciary, and state level execution, state level legislative assemblies, and state level judiciary high courts. Is this clear to everyone? Okay. So the idea will be to understand both levels of this. And then there are certain other issues which we have to take care. For example, when the power is distributed in the society, it is just not distributed in constitution, through the constitution, or it is just not distributed in legislative, executive and judicial bodies. It is also distributed among citizens and non-state government agencies. So for example, when the parliament passed a law 4 years ago, farmers bill, all of us remember that how farmers protested for like 2 years. That protest continuing for 2 years led the government to withdraw the bills, right? All of us know that. Now, the protests were done by Farmers Association. And because of the power applied by the Farmers Association, the government had to withdraw the bill, which means that non-governmental organizations also have a lot of power. And that is why when we will see the syllabus in some time, you can see NGOs, self-help groups, pressure groups, donors and charities also is a part of your syllabus of polity, because they are also playing a role in distribution of power in the society. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. विकास, मेरे पास तेरे को मीटिंग से निकालने का पावर है, कैमरा ऑन कर ले. विकास, प्लीज टर्न ऑन योर कैमरा. जाधव महेश, आदित्य, प्लीज टर्न ऑन योर कैमरा. ये हुई ना बात. आदित्य, okay. So, wow, such a lame excuse that you have. All right, so let's see the distribution of the questions that can be directly traced to the polity and governance as a subject. So you can see that peaking in 2017 to around 22 to 23 marks, it has gone down to around 12 to 13 questions, and then eventually in 2025 there were 16 questions from polity, which means out of 100 questions there are going to be at least 16 to 18 questions every year in polity. Now that can be basics of polity, basics of governance, or dealing with the current affairs aspect of the polity and governance. But I can tell you with certainty that largely it is going to be just the basic understanding of the constitutional text and some understanding of basic theoretical concepts related to polity and PSIR. Is this clear to everyone? So you can see that if you combine the basics of polity with economy, with geography and history, that takes you to the cutoff. While people obsess about current affairs, current affairs, current affairs all the time, you ask us and you ask other people who have cleared prelims every time, they will tell you that it takes one attempt to realize current affairs has a very, very limited role in your overall chances of selection in prelims. So the idea is to first make your core so strong that you just on the basis of the core can clear the prelims examination, and that is where polity, economy, history, geography comes to play. That forms the core. They have a standard book, they have a standard text. We know the trend of the questions, and that's how we can devise our strategy to maximize our score. For example, from polity, if you do it right, out of 16 to 17 questions, you can mark 14 correct. That is the guarantee we can give you. Is this clear to everyone? Okay. Look at the kind of questions that are being asked, and let's then devise the strategy as to how we are going to carry out with the foundation course. Which one of the following reflects the most appropriate relation between law and liberty? Which one of the following best defines the term state? Now, why I have put these questions, these are the previous year questions. So what we are going to do is that before we will begin any topic, we will first go through PYQ. And then we will cover the subject. That is mainly done so that I can establish my importance. कि देखो, मैंने जब नहीं पढ़ाया था तो एक सवाल नहीं हो रहा था आप लोगों से, मेरे एक लेक्चर के बाद आपसे सारे क्वेश्चंस हो रहे. Yeah, but besides the point, the idea is that to reinforce and ingrain the idea that whenever and whichever topic you start, your guiding lights are PY. Because as you will see soon, that when you look at the syllabus of UPSC, which they release in PDF, in prelims examination, they do not tell you much about what to read and what not to read. Correct? So as you will see soon, in polity and governance, it's barely a one-line syllabus in prelims examination. So that does not really gives away much as to what has to be prepared. So the rest of the guidance comes from PYQ. So it is the PYQ which lets us know that when we will start our foundation course, I have to start by talking about what is a law and what is liberty. What is the difference between freedom and liberty? So when I ask you what is a law, probably you will say something that is passed by the parliament is a law, but that is not the reality. Something that is binding is a law, probably that is also not largely true. What is the association between law and liberty? Similarly, you can see the term state has been asked. Now, can you find these two answers in Lakshmikant? You will not be able to find. Correct? So, we will start our foundation course by going through some of the basic concepts, two of which we will discuss today as well. The basic concepts like what is justice? Correct? What is democracy? What is the idea of equality? What does it mean to treat everyone equally? Should we treat everyone equally without discrimination? Or maybe discrimination is an inherent part of equality. So a lot of people see reservation as a violation of equality. But when you will go through the discussion, you will understand probably that is the better understanding of equality. Then we will have to understand these basic terms like Marxism, communism, liberalism, socialism, anarchism, fascism, totalitarianism, authoritarianism, because these are the common terms which are going to help you not only write good essays, broaden your horizon of understanding, but also they are going to be extremely helpful when we are going to discuss the polity, basics of polity and governance. And obviously you can see if UPSC can ask liberty, then UPSC can ask liberalism also, because the core of liberalism is liberty. Is this making sense to everyone? Okay. So you can see, after asking very basic questions on key terms that should be important for our understanding of polity, UPSC directly goes into the constitution text. The preamble to the Constitution of India is, with reference to India, consider the following statements, directly asking questions from the basic constitutional provisions and legal provisions. So the idea is to show you which of the following is our exclusive powers of Lok Sabha: to ratify declaration of emergency, to pass a motion of no confidence, to impeach the President of India. How are you going to know these things unless and until you read the Bare Act? Because these lines are directly taken from the Constitution of India. Is this making sense to everyone? Okay, so when it comes to the main syllabus, this is the syllabus that will act as our guiding light, because unlike the prelims examination where the syllabus is not defined at all, in case of mains examination the syllabus is very well defined. So if you look at any of the year's notification, you can clearly see what the UPSC expects in GS paper 2. So in GS paper 2, the first line of the syllabus says historical underpinnings, evolution, features, amendments, significant provision and basic structures. So you can see it starts with the term Indian Constitution. So we are expected to understand what went into the creation of the Constitution of India. How did the Constitution of India come into effect? What was the process of the writing of the Constitution of India? How did Constituent Assembly created and drafted the beautiful Constitution of India? That is historical platform on which the Constitution was projected. Then we know that Constitution is a living document. Constitution is not fossilized. It keeps on changing with time. For example, just last year, women have been given 33% reservation in the legislative assemblies in Lok Sabha. Now that was not the provision that existed before 2024. So it has evolved. The Constitution of India keeps on evolving. It keeps on evolving because of the amendment of the text. through constitutional amendment. It keeps on evolving because of judicial activism. Judiciary tells you life is just not life, life includes shelter. At that pronouncement, the constitution has evolved. Because now the life is no more just a breathing life, life also includes livelihood and shelter, life also includes privacy. So there are various mechanisms through which the constitution keeps on evolving with time. So that has to be understood. Important features have to be understood, which anyways are a next line of the syllabus. We will have to understand how and through what procedure the constitution is amended, so amendment procedure, and then we will have to understand the doctrine of basic structure, which if you do not know right now, there is no problem, we are going to take care of that. Functions and responsibilities of the union and the states. What is it that Modi ji is supposed to do? If you will come to know how much is he supposed to do, then probably you will have a better assessment of what he is not doing. Correct? So you can see that functions and responsibilities of the union and the states. What the constitution expects the union to do and what the constitution of India expects the states to do. And when in a relationship, when you have the conflict of expectations, you have problems, and that is why you will have a problem when the union is not able to fulfill the expectations of the state and the states are not able to fulfill the expectations of the union. That's when you will have issues and challenges pertaining to the center-state relations. Right? Chief Minister wants to do something, Modi ji is not allowing them to do that. Prime Minister Modi wants to do something, Chief Ministers are not allowing them to do that. That kinds of problems. There are a lot of problems between the center and the state. If there is anyone from Kerala or Tamil Nadu in the class, please unmute yourself. Yes, Nandana. Oh, forgot. Nandana, do you think union government is allowing the Kerala government to function properly? It is not, right? Yeah, yeah. So you can see that there are a lot of issues and challenges between the relationship of Nandana and Prime Minister Modi. So some part of that is because of the problems in the constitution as well. Part of that is because of the non-constitutional challenges that the center and the state face. For example, when Modi ji was chief minister, you can go on YouTube, you will find many of his speeches where he used to say, I will not allow the position of the governor to wreck the governance of Gujarat. Because at that point of time, central government was controlled by Congress and he was the BJP chief minister. But as soon as he became the prime minister, he never talked about the problems of governor because he realized how useful the tool of governor is. Governor is known as long arm of the center. So although he is the head of the state, but because he is appointed and because he can be removed by the president, he works on the wishes of the prime minister. So there is a WhatsApp group of all the governors. The group admin is Amit Shah. And in the morning, the agenda is laid down. Governor of Andhra Pradesh, please stop the bill of Legislative Assembly. Veto. To Governor of Tamil Nadu, tagged, ऐसे tag करते हैं ना हम लोग group में, we tag each other. So at Governor Tamil Nadu, veto the government's notification. At Governor of Andhra Pradesh, at Governor of Assam. And so you can see through that common WhatsApp group, Amit Shah is able to control the exercise of all the functions of all the governors in our country. That is a mechanism that has been provided by the Constitution of India, which has to be understood. Okay. So you can see next line of the syllabus says separation of power between various organs. Now what is it, the separation of power? Separation of power is a very, very modern idea. Where earlier, the pre-modern states or pre-modern political associations, probably a group of people, or in many cases a single person, had all the power, known as emperor or monarch, raja. जैसे हम when we watch Indian thematic serials like going up to medieval ages or in ancient times, हम कहते हैं ना महाराजा धीराज पधार रहे हैं. So that Maharaja Dhiraj was nothing but a person who could lay down the law. मेरा वचन ही है शासन. When you watch Bahubali, you don't understand that it has politics. So when Dev Sena says my मेरा वचन ही है शासन, which means whatever comes out of my mouth becomes the law of the land. So it becomes the law of the land. So she is the legislature herself, by herself. And then she will ensure that the law will get implemented. So she is the head of the executive also, and she has the power to give punishment. So she is the judiciary. But there was a person in France known as Montesquieu. He realized that as long as the people who make laws, people who execute laws, and people who adjudicate upon those laws are same, there will be no justice in the society. So we need to separate lawmaking from execution from judiciary. And the modern states then incorporated this idea very seriously. If you want to make the laws, you can't be judge. If you want to be a judge, you can't be an MP. As simple as that. Does that make sense to everyone? So we have to understand first what the separation of power as an idea is. But obviously that original idea is utopian conception. It cannot be applied as it is. So it has to be modified. So we modified this separation of power to suit to the unique Indian requirements. So what are the modifications that we have done, for example, in legislature, in executive, to deviate away from France and America has to be understood. Because of this separation of power, the organs often collide with each other, especially judiciary colliding with executive. They brought electoral bond, judiciary cancelled it, created a conflict. Executive wants to control the appointment of Supreme Court and High Court judges. Judiciary does not let them do that. So because of this separation of power, just like when you live with your siblings, you try to create a boundary. ये मेरा बेड है, ये तेरा बेड है, बट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट तो होता है. तू मेरे बेड पे कॉपी कैसे रख के चला गया, और पिटाई चालू. And so you can see that even when you want to divide the territory among your siblings, there is going to be a dispute, but the only redressal mechanism in that case are parents. But the Constitution of India has provided a very different dispute redressal mechanisms. So we will have to understand what will happen if executive and legislature collide with each other. What will happen when judiciary and executive will collide with each other? How are you going to resolve those kinds of disputes? When Madhya Pradesh sends their police to fight with Uttar Pradesh police, do you think it can't happen? If you think it can't happen, that has happened twice in last 2 years, where the Manipur police fired on Assam police, and Assam police fired on Mizoram police. So just like siblings fight, the states fight with each other. What is the mechanism to prevent them from fighting is an important understanding of dispute redressal mechanism. Then obviously, mains syllabus expects you to have a decent amount of understanding about what are the constitutions of different democracies look like. What are their simple basic level features? So for example, while you are expected to know the nuances of Indian constitution, you are not expected to memorize the entire American or French or a British constitution. You are expected to have a decent level understanding as to what British parliamentary system is, how the judiciary in Britain operates, how the Congress and President is elected in USA, what is the semi-presidential style of France. So certain basic understanding and exposure to different constitution of the world forms an essential understanding of main syllabus, and that comes very important and very handy. That is very helpful for prelim syllabus as well. Then parliament and state legislatures. So what we are expected to know is what is the structure of legislature and what is the structure of parliament. So for example, when we talk about the structure of parliament, we can see that there are three parts, correct? Lok Sabha, House of the People, Council of States, Rajya Sabha, and President. These three are the part of the parliament. When it comes to the legislature, we have two kinds of legislature, one with a single house, legislative assemblies, and there are 5-6 states where you have one more house which is known as the legislative council, correct? So we will have to understand the structure of the legislatures and their functioning. What are they expected to perform and why they are not able to perform? So what do you think is the role or function of the legislative assemblies? The legislative assemblies across the globe are expected to perform various functions. For example, they are expected to make laws. They are expected to raise the concerns of people. They are expected to, raise, for example, keep the executive accountable. So for example, in India, the role of Lok Sabha largely is to keep the executive accountable. But beyond that also, the legislature and the parliament are expected to perform a few other functions. For example, the role of the parliament is to give rise to the next generation leaders. In US, except for Donald Trump, most of the presidents that have preceded him have been senators. So when you perform well in parliament, you are looked upon as, हाँ, ये है हमारा नेता, ये बनेगा prime minister. Nehru, while observing a speech given by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, had this prediction made in 1962 that this person one day would become the prime minister of India. वो अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी को पता नहीं था उसमें 55 साल लग जाएंगे, but in 1998 eventually that prophecy came to be true. But if I ask you, who do you think can become the next prime minister of India? Think about few names. Don't say it. Who can become the next prime minister of India? I can bet one name all of us are thinking, Rang de tu mohe gerua. And one name is common for all of us probably. And then if you are thinking about three names, none of them are only MPs or MLAs. They are either chief ministers or they are either ministers at the central level. That's what shows inability of the parliament right now to give rise to the next generation leaders. Unless and until you are a part of judiciary or executive, you are not looked as a leader. So that shows how the parliament and its functioning has declined, so that if you are just a part of legislature, you are no more important for the society. Shiva, what happened? Why are you so sad? Okay. Then obviously there is a particular procedure in which the proceedings have to go in the parliament, and that is important to be understood. Then powers and privileges. You know that MPs have a lot of power. ऐसी गाड़ियों पे विधायक जी नहीं लिखा होता है, सांसद जी, विधायक जी, पार्षद साहब, because the constitution has given them a lot of privileges and powers. So not a lot of people understand that if they prevent an MP from going to participate in the discussion or a debate, they can end up in jail. That is a provision in the Constitution of India. That is a part of the immunity that legislators and members of parliament get in our country, which is known as privileges. Nothing can come in the way when they are going to attend the session. So if you go on internet, you can see that a traffic inspector in Hyderabad was suspended because an MLA cavalcade was jumping red light and he was stopped कि सर चालान कटेगा आपका. उसने कहा आपकी नौकरी कटेगी, आप टेंशन मत लो. He reached to the legislative assembly, he halted the entire discussion, and then in the evening the traffic sub inspector was called and then he was suspended the same night. and these are constitutionally legal provisions. It's not like they are some power that is not given to them by law or by the parliament, by the constitution. Then obviously you have structure, organization, functioning of executive and judiciary. When you look at the executive, you think about prime minister. You don't realize that there is a prime minister office behind the scenes working 24/7. While Modi ji is working 26/7, his office is working less than him, but he's working for. So you have the entire thousands of people supporting the executive. Then you have central secretariat to provide all the human resource to rest of the ministries. So how are these ministries organized? So when you look at the Ministry of Agriculture, where do you see the Ministry of Agriculture on paper? What creates these ministries? When you look at the designation of some of the ministers, you see cabinet minister. What is meant by cabinet minister? What is meant by minister of state independent charge? All these aspects go into understanding of structure, organization, and functioning of executive. And similarly, judiciary. You have district courts, you have higher courts, and you have Supreme Court. What is the difference between their organization and their power and functions? How they use their power. How judiciary has been able to get and amass so much more power over a period of last 50 years. So if you look at the powers of judiciary, it looks like a Pokemon. But when judiciary acts in a real life, it has a power of a superhero, like a Superman. It's a very cute looking figure. But when it comes to exercise their power, they are really, really very powerful. And on top of that, they have managed to acquire a lot of power from legislature and executive. So that will be understood here. And then obviously you can see that we will have to understand how elections are conducted in our country, because once you get selected, one of the most important tasks that you are given is to conduct the election. So either you are a district magistrate or a superintendent of police, a lot of responsibilities about just to conduct successful elections in your jurisdiction. Then obviously you know that we have created a lot of constitutional authorities. So for example, you have heard about Election Commission, CAG. Suna hai sabne CAG, all of us have heard about CAG. Attorney General we know. Finance Commission is something we have heard of. How many of us have heard about National Commission of Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes? All of us have heard about that. So these are the constitutional positions that the Constitution of India has created. We have to understand why they have been created and what powers have been given to them. Why was there a need to create a National Commission for Scheduled Caste? There must have been some substantial reasons for it. Why did we create National Commission for Backward Castes? Why did we create the office of CAG? There must have been some reason as to why five articles had to be drafted to be included in the Constitution of India. And then obviously there are a lot of bodies that you must have heard about which have legal basis law known as statutory bodies. The function is to regulate, and they also have certain judicial powers. Have you heard about SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India? RBI suna hai. So Reserve Bank of India is a body that is created by the law. It has a lot of judicial powers. So you can see that we will have to understand the regulators. Like SEBI. SEBI regulates the share market. How many people have invested in the share market? Looks like Mahesh has. No, Mahesh? Sai have Shiva, Gursimran, Divyansh, Poonam, have you invested in share market? You're trying to invest? Don't do it for next 1 month. Let the market come to the bottom and then invest. So these bodies take care of the trust that people have. The fact that when you are investing lakhs or thousands of rupees into share market, who will guarantee that the money will come back to you? The only thing that will determine whether the money goes up or down is the performance of the company and nothing else. Correct? So these are the bodies which regulate different sectors. So for example, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India regulates the telecom sector. RBI regulates the banking sector. Insurance, have you heard about IRDA? So when you watch television or when you watch YouTube videos, you see a disclaimer in a 2x speed, mutual funds are subject to market risks. Do you think these mutual fund companies themselves put it? No, they are forced to display that ad. Who forces them to tell it to you that what they are offering you is risky? You are not going to do that. Correct? There needs to be a regulator which forces you, say it. Because it is risky, let the consumer know that it is risky. So when private players operate, they need regulation. Otherwise, they will misuse the information asymmetry. And that is why regulation is needed for every sector. So this forms the core of polity. And then beyond the core of polity, you have certain governance related matters and society related matters like development process and development industry. The role of NGOs, SHG and various groups and associations, donors, charities, institutional and other stakeholders. When we look at the development, we don't realize that development is a process. So for example, if I ask you what do you understand by development, probably all of you are going to say different things about development. Raise your hands and tell me what do you understand by development. So environmental, economic and social growth is one definition we have, Nandana. So for Nandana, development means empowerment of other people, not yours. Yours as okay, okay. Divyansh. Okay. So everyone is prep. Yeah, Jadav. Yes. Come again, Mahesh, please. Qualitative, qualitative advancement. Okay. So while all of you are correct, no one can question your idea of development on their idea of development. The problem only is that how to quantify what does, for example, economic, social, and environmental development means. In fact, when the whole discourse around modern states began, the only idea about development was economic growth. If your economy is doing well, you are growing. Slowly and gradually, people started realizing that not the entire growth is being distributed in the society, and hence the idea of inclusive growth came, which meant that if you add $1 billion to your GDP, then how much of that is being distributed across all sections and strata of society? So, is it going to upper caste and lower caste both? Is it going to all the people belonging to all the religions in our country? So, the growth should include the entire nation. Slowly and gradually, it was realized that is also not true, because the way we want to develop is purely economical. It is not having any impact on social and economic indicators. Hence, the idea of social economic growth and development came. But if you want to achieve rapid economic growth and societal development, it comes at a cost of environmental degradation. So people started realizing if you add $2 billion, but if you have to deforest a lot of area and you have to degrade a lot of land because of mining, then probably that $2 billion of extra wealth is useless. And hence the idea of sustainable development came, the development which is also sustainable. So you can see that development is a process. It is never complete. As soon as you arrive at one understanding of development, you can already see the next target. So the next target is human development, which is what empowerment and other aspects it includes. There are a lot of players in the society which utilize this process as an industry, and that is known as development industry. So who wants to do development? State wants to make you develop. Society also wants to make you develop. For example, Nandana wants the empowerment of others. So, what can be done to make other people develop, and who are these people? These are known as civic society organizations. The organization with the society forms apart from and beyond the government and the state. These are known as NGOs, SHGs, various groups and associations, donors. So we will have to understand what an NGO is. How do NGOs help the society? What are the problems that NGOs face in the society? What is an SHG? What is the role that SHGs perform? And what are the problems that SHG face? And so on and so forth. Once you become an IAS officer, this line of the syllabus gets generally deleted from your conscience, and that is transparency and accountability. And that is why UPSC wants you to first write those answers, because the thought process is that probably if you write that bureaucracy needs to be transparent and the mechanisms of transparency, the bureaucrats need to be accountable, the mechanisms of accountability, the idea is that probably you will remain transparent for longer. Correct? So we will have to understand all those mechanisms which are important for good governance. So you can govern a country in both good as well as the bad way. But the idea of governance should be good governance, not the bad governance. So what creates good governance? What are the elements of creating good governance? We will understand. So this is largely, so until this point, the syllabus is rooted in PSIR optional. From this point until this point, it is a public administration option. So combining two, we get the GS paper 2. Is this clear to everyone? Any doubts so far? So this is how we are going to devise our foundation classes. We will start with the political theory, where we will understand all the basic terms which are required in like 3-4 lectures. Then we will move to the constitutional development, how the Constitution of India came into effect. Then preamble, part 1 until part 4, executive, president, vice president, PM, COM, governor, judiciary, Supreme Court, High Court, District Court and tribunals, Parliament and legislature, federal provision, which means center-state relation and emergency-related provisions, schedules, constitutional bodies, miscellaneous, and then governance towards the end. Any doubts so far? Yes, who's this? Divyansh, हाँ पूछ. दिव्यांश, बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन पूछा है दिव्यांश ने. ही इज बेसिकली इंटरेस्टेड टू नो what is the difference between governance and the core of polity that deals with executive, legislature and judiciary. Yeah, so in polity the idea is to pay attention to the constitution and all the 3 organs of the state equally. So polity is not concerned about IAS and IPS officers, but governance is only concerned about the permanent part of the executive. So the Constitution of India creates executive and then legislature and judiciary. The polity is interested to know this. But executive consists of temporary executive, the council of ministers, who are replaced every 5 years, then a huge chunk of permanent bureaucracy or permanent executive, which are irreplaceable, permanent. Once you become an IAS, the only thing that can make sure, the only thing that will remove you from your job is your retirement age. So there is no other way that the government officers can be removed from their service. So they are permanent executive. So the governance is focused here. The polity and the constitution is focused over here. Yeah, so this is governance day to day. You can't meet the council of ministers. You meet the police inspector. I hope you don't meet them also, but you meet the traffic inspectors probably every day. Right. So what is the part of the state which interacts with you every day? Permanent executive. If you have to get your passports made, you interact with this organ. If you have to get your ration cards, you interact with this organ. You have to get your Aadhaar card, PAN card. So because it is the organ which interacts with people on a daily basis, this needs to be accountable. This needs to behave properly. Do you think they behave properly? They don't. So what are the problems because of which they don't behave properly? What are the problems of government offices? So that has to be understood in governance. Okay? All right. So before we begin, yes, please. Yeah. So that's why India has modified the separation of power, where some of the legislatures are also the part of executive, not all. So that's what is known as parliamentary form of government. Okay, so I am forwarding a practice sheet to you. You will have to spend 5 minutes, and then we will start discussing this topic. Let me send it to the group. Yes. So the topic that we are going to discuss today are democracy and constitution. So what I have done is that I have collated few MCQs. I want you to pick up pen and paper and mark the answers to the question from 1 to 13, and then after the discussion ends we are going to write 150-word answer on describing the term democracy and explain its basic features. Can you see the PDF? Okay. So right now it's 10:15. You have time until 10:18. Please make sure that you solve the MCQs, and then towards the end we will see on the group. Wait a second. Okay, wait a second. Yeah, it will be shared. दया भाई उसको Are we done? Are we done? Okay. Then let's look at few more questions. And I want to understand as to which one is a better mechanism to give you the practice on a daily basis. Is it displaying them on the board and sharing the screen on Zoom platform, or is it better on the WhatsApp group? On WhatsApp is better? Okay. Please read these four questions as well and try to solve them. Shiva, are you able to read them? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Are we done? क्या बात है? Mahesh, your first name is Mahesh or your surname is Mahesh? Okay, your name. So why have you written it like that? Jadhav Mahesh. Jadhav. क्या बात? Okay, so probably when you were solving questions on democracy, I think you could have gotten a lot of questions right. But when you solve questions on a topic probably that you are not exposed to, it could be difficult, which is what I did here. Because if you do not know what constitutionalism is, then it will be very difficult for you to mark answers on that. Democracy is something that largely we are exposed to as to what democracy means, because we live in a democracy. So basically when we give options on democracy, you can apply what you see in India, and you know which one of the statements are correct, because that comes from a lived experience, right? So if one of the options is democracy gets things done, you know that's false. Because democracy never gets things done, and so that's always the problem with democracy. And that is why people argue whether democracy is the form of government to take into action or to adopt when you create a new state or a new nation. Okay, so let's start discussing both of these topics, starting with what the constitution is, and that's the core essence of polity as well. So if I take a lecture today, when I'll come back for polity, my task is easier. So whenever people want to live together in an organized society, some rules have to be written down. Do you think it's possible to allow a fully functional society without written down rules, without the codification of laws? It is impossible, correct? So every society has a rule, every gated community has a rule. In fact, every home consisting of more than one person has a rule. In fact, people have a rule for themselves also. रात में मैं मोबाइल इंस्टाग्राम पे रील्स नहीं सर्फ करूंगा. Probably Everyone has that rule, correct? कि नहीं 2 घंटे, फिर वो पता चलता है कि 2 बजे तक जग गए रील्स देखते देखते. So you can see that rule is not something which is required only when we deal with other people. It is also equally required when we deal with ourselves. So when people organize themselves into a lived experience as a part of common cohabitation or living together, constitution becomes important. What is constitution? Constitution is by definition supreme law of the land, which means that any other law in that particular society is inferior to this. This is the only law that is supreme. Now the question is, when I give you 4 different laws, and if I don't give you the title of these laws, how will you know which one of them is constitution? So if I give you 4 PDFs right now and just their essence, how will you know which one of them is constitution? How will you know which one of the text is constitution? Raise your hands if you want to participate. जतिन, कौन सा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन होगा उसमें से? What I'm saying is that the constitution of a country is the supreme law of the land. No law is superior to that law. Every law is inferior to that law. How will we know which text is constitution? So if I give you 4 different laws, how will you know which one of those laws is the supreme law of the land? Nandana? Correct. So what Nandana says is that the constitution or the text that will be known as the Constitution of India will create parliament. No other law can create parliament because rest of the laws are created by the parliament. It will create precedent. It will create Supreme Court. It will create higher judiciary. It will create all the other organs of the state. So the supreme law of the land is needed or is necessary because through that supreme law of the land, state is created. Because the state is created, all the organs of the state is created. In the supreme law of the land, you will find the powers of the organs, you will find the functions of the organs, you will find the responsibilities of the organs. It will be the supreme law of the land which will define how the citizens will interact with the government or the state. But there is one more way that you can identify the Constitution of India. Even if I don't give you the heading of the text, the title of the text, the title of the PDF, then also you can, just by reading that text, you can identify this one is the Constitution, even if you do not have any exposure. Divyansh? Jadav, raise your hands. Divyansh has already raised the hand. Divyansh? Correct. So what Divyansh says is that the rights will be given in the Constitution. This is what we define the relationship between citizen and state. But if you look at the Constitution of India or the supreme law of the land, the process of amendment of the supreme law of the land will be the most difficult process of amendment. So while you can change the rest of the laws by ordinary majority, simple majority, majority of all the then members present and voting, you can change the Constitution of India only by 2/3 majority. That is why it is the supreme law of the land, because to change even a single alphabet and word in that text, you require very high majority. So what is the supreme law of the land? How do we know this particular text is the supreme? Is by the difficult process of its amendment. So the supreme law of the land of America, the Constitution of America, is the most difficult law to amend. And that is what elevates its position. That is what makes it an extremely superior, the difficult process of amendment. Is this making sense to everyone? So what is a constitution? Constitution is a supreme law of the land which creates the state, which creates the organs of the states, gives its powers, functions, responsibility, and defines the relationship between the citizen and the state. How they will be related? Whether they will be related through rights, citizens will have rights against the state, or whether it will be defined in terms of the duties, the citizens will have duties towards the state. It depends upon state to state. So this is about constitution. And so why constitutions have become so important in modern times? It is understood that whenever a state will become independent, whenever it will, let's say, if it breaks free from colonialism, it is probably the first exercise in sovereignty. How do we know we are free? What is the announcement to the world that now we have gained independence? By writing a constitution. So constitution in that sense is an exercise in self-respect, that instead of being driven by other people's laws, now we will be driven by laws made by ourselves, and here is the supreme law of the land that our Constituent Assembly has created. So that is an announcement that now we are independent. So that is why the constitution have become the central point of understanding of the polity. It helps when you create a supreme law of the land which creates the organs. But do you think just having a constitution, just having a supreme law of the land which creates the state, which defines the organs, which defines the relationship between the state and individual, is sufficient enough to create a peaceful, ordered society? Why do you think so? It is being followed. Or maybe when we are defining the state, or when we are creating its organs, these organs can be created in any way. So just having a constitution communicates no idea about in what way and through what function, through in which manner the organs of the state will be created. So it is a value neutral term. There is a constitution for North Korea also. There is a constitution for Iran also. There is a constitution for India also. And there is a constitution for United States of America also. All these 4 states have a constitution, but a very different one. The idea that I want to communicate to you is that just writing a constitution does not communicate anything. So just like governance itself, we have understood is a value neutral term, there can be bad governance and there can be good governance. Similarly, there can be bad constitutions like North Korea, giving all the power to a single person coming from a single family and giving no minimum rights to its individual. It's a bad constitution. How do we differentiate between what is a good and what is a bad constitution? And the idea of writing good constitution is known as constitutionalism, which is what the PYQs were all about. That is, that if you work so hard to write a supreme law of the land, you cannot end up writing a bad law. How can you utilize the power to write the constitution and then you end up writing bad constitution? And so in that sense, you can see that the constitutionalism becomes an essential part of writing of the constitution, that is creating a limited state. What does it mean by creating a limited state? When you write the constitution, you do not give unlimited power to anyone. Because if you do, the whole hard work of writing the constitution will go to waste. If you had to give power to one organ, one person, one family, then why did you even begin writing the constitution? There was no point for you to write the constitution if you had to give power to one person. So if you write the constitution, make sure that it has certain essential ingredients which do not allow unlimited power to anyone. How do you do that? You create separation of power, which means the entire power in the society, instead of being given to one organ or one set of people, is distributed into different organs, so that no single person or no single group of people are able to make laws, execute laws, and adjudicate upon laws. So you can see separation of power is an idea of creating a limited state or a constitution that is laced with constitutionalism. Is this making sense to everyone? So if the people who make laws, just wait a second, Arushi, I will give you the time to ask questions. Raise your hands and then don't interrupt like that. So if the people who make the laws do not execute the laws, you can see that you have already created weak people, weak powerful, weak political executives. Instead of the previous situation where people who were making the laws also were executing the laws. If you have created two levels of government, central government and state government, you gave some power to the central government and some powers to the state governments, you have fragmented the power vertically, not allowing either the center or the state to have unlimited power. You have created a good constitution. Is this making sense to everyone? If you have created a constitution where certain minimum rights are protected by the constitution, what you say is that the government is not allowed to prevent you from speaking. The government is not allowed to prevent you from movement. The government is not allowed to take away your life. The government is not allowed to take away your property. You have created a limited government. You have created a good constitution. Is this making sense to everyone? So when you write the constitution, you should write the good constitution. What is the benchmark for good constitution is the limited state, not an unlimited state where people have all the power. Some people have all the power, rest of the people do not have any power, and where citizens also have the power against this. If the state prevents you from writing an Instagram post, you can go to the Supreme Court. Sir, इन्होंने मुझे रोका है, आप इनको जरा ठीक करो. सुप्रीम कोर्ट तुरंत ठीक कर देगा सुप्रीम कोर्ट को, गवर्नमेंट को. सुप्रीम कोर्ट तो बैठा रहता है कि आप जाओ वहाँ पे. जब हम जुडिशरी पढ़ेंगे तो आपको समझ में आएगा कि अभी तक आप बहुत सारी चीज़ों के लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट जा सकते थे, बट फॉर द लैक ऑफ अवेयरनेस यू डिड नॉट गो देयर. इज दिस मेकिंग सेंस टू एवरीवन? यस. आरुषि, Arushi, you had a doubt. Who was that? Good Simran, yes. For different countries, the idea of good governance can be different, the idea of good constitution can be different. For example, in Afghanistan, the good governance is a governance where women are not seen on the streets. For India, we consider good governance only when women are safe on the street. Correct? So you can see that the idea of governance is a very subjective idea of governance. Correct. So what Gursimran asks is that how can we arrive at a common understanding of what is a good constitution, if whether it can be subjective term? Absolutely, Gursimran, it can be a subjective term. It is a subjective term, but generally what we have to do is that this is a GS syllabus. So out of all the options, what is accepted generally globally by the liberal Western world, including India as the benchmark, we are going to study that benchmark. Just like in governance, we cannot discuss different subjective opinions about governance. What is the good governance understanding in India and the Western world is our benchmark. So we will have to take one as more relevant over others, and that's what we have to understand. So GS is not comparative studies in governance and polity. Divyansh. So here we are not discussing weak constitution, we are discussing good constitution. We are not understanding weak or strong constitution. These are the terms that do not exist. You can have a weak government. You can have a strong government. We are not discussing the constitution being weak or strong. That is not a term that exists. It's a very powerful government which has unlimited power and where citizens do not have any minimum protected rights. It creates a so a good constitution creates a limited government, a limited state, not a weak state or a weak government. That is not the term. It is limited. Do you do you think Prime Minister Modi is weak? No, but he's limited. He is very powerful on all those matters on which constitution has given him power to act. Ask Pakistan after Operation Sindoor, right? Okay. So you can see that this whole idea of writing down a constitution should be driven by the idea of writing good constitution. And you can see that the Constitution of India, even if we have not started, you know that we have created three different wings. We have created two levels of government. We have created rights in the Constitution of India. So we have a sufficient enough reason to believe that the Constitution of India is constitutionalism, which means it has created a good constitution simply because the globally accepted norms of good constitution are found in the Constitution of India as well. Is this making sense to everyone? Okay. However, it was B.R. Ambedkar who was the head of the drafting committee of the Constitution. So he was the person who was in charge of finalizing each and every word in the Constitution. Towards the concluding session of Constituent Assembly debates, everyone was congratulating कि मचा दिया ब्रो, क्या और क्या लिखा है संविधान हमने, क्या मतलब एक एक आर्टिकल क्या चुना है. And right in the corner, Ambedkar was not feeling very happy about the constitution that largely he had finalized. And people were like, what is this topper's attitude, man? You have done a very decent job. Why are you not happy? And he was like, I know we have created a decent enough constitution, but my studies into the global constitution and comparative analysis tells me that having a constitution with constitutionalism is never sufficient for the society. नेहरू तो वैसे भी LLB में फेल हो गए थे तो उनको कुछ ज़्यादा पता तो था नहीं ऑक्सफोर्ड में. So he was like, what are you saying? So far you led us to believe that this is the sufficient, this is what will enable us to create a good society, to create a good constitution which will be able to cater to all the diverse needs of the society. And now suddenly towards the end you break this to us that this is not sufficient. So Ambedkar says this is necessary, but it is not sufficient. Why is it not sufficient? Is because of the difference between the society and the values of the society and the constitution and the values of the constitution. Society in India focuses on inequality. You belong to the lower caste, you will sit there. You belong to untouchable section of the society, you are not allowed to drink water from the same tap as I drink water. You are not allowed to marry my daughter because you belong to different caste. Intercaste marriages in India continue to face so much of social prohibition. You belong to that religion, you are not allowed to be a part of this association. Equality is not something that Indian society appreciates, but look at the Constitution of India. Equality, 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 equality. We are going to impose completely different understanding of society on Indians. How far that will be tenable? How far do you think Constitution of India will go on as a topsoil, on a bedrock of completely different values? So basically what he was saying, that look at what had happened in Afghanistan. NATO forces acquired power, removed Taliban, a Western constitution was given to Afghanistan. The day Americans withdrew in 2019, it did not take 30 days for Taliban to replace the 20-year-old modern government, and modern constitution was replaced by Sharia law because the society continued to be like that. And what Ambedkar was trying to say is that just the constitution combined with the limited state will never be sufficient enough to allow the constitution to last for very long unless and until the society is moved by the values of the constitution. So every society has morals, that is known as social morality. Every society has an understanding of what is good and bad. Every family has an understanding of what is good and bad. They can be same, they can be different also. So for example, if you are a person who comes from area around Western UP, probably most of the people do not take non-veg eating as morally good. Youngsters have adopted the eating of non-veg, but they do it in a hidden way, right? उनके घर वालों को नहीं पता है कि वो नॉन वेज खाते हैं. नहीं नहीं भाई, हम तो नहीं खाते नॉन वेज, हमारे घर में तो ये सब नहीं चलता. दैट इज अ सोशल मोरालिटी. Correct? Homosexuality not being taken as a or being taken as an immoral act is a social morality. Constitution of India is not concerned with what you want to eat and what you don't want to eat. Who do you want to live your life as a partner? The Constitution of India does not talks about that. So you can see that while the society wants you to look that way, the Constitution forces you to look the other way. The Constitution of India wants to give you equality, society wants to give you inequality. The Constitution of India wants to give you liberty in preamble, in Article 19, in Article 20, 21, 22. The society in India makes you completely illiberal. You are expected to do the profession of the caste that you are born into. Even now, largely, people are doing the jobs that their caste designates them to do in rural areas. This was even more entrenched in 1950, when most of the people adopted the profession according to their caste. That goes against liberty. Untouchables were not allowed entry into upper caste areas and their farmlands. Goes against freedom. So the whole concern was of Ambedkar was, if the social morality does not aligns with the morality of the constitution, constitutional morality, the constitution will not survive for long. And he could see the problem that in India, the society and societal values were extremely opposed to the values of the constitution. The Constitution of India wanted us to be fraternity. The society in India did not have fraternity. The India continues to be divided on caste, religion and regional lines. And then everyone started taking notes of Ambedkar कि हाँ भाई अब बता क्या करना है, अब तो हो गया, अब क्या कर सकते हैं, आगे की वे फॉरवर्ड क्या है, अब तो जो होना था वो हो गया. And that's when Ambedkar makes a fabulous speech about the importance of constitutional morality in surviving the constitution. Number one is that we should make people aware about the values of the constitution. And since then, whichever book of NCERT that you download has a screenshot of preamble. So that as soon as you open the book, the government knows most of the people will opt out of that booklet by 10 or 12 or 15 pages. So they don't take the risk. Right at the first page, there is a preamble screenshot. So that when you read, you know, we the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to give them all justice, equality, liberty, fraternity. The awareness about the constitutional values slowly and gradually will maybe one day tilt back the social morality so that both moralities converge. Probably we have achieved that task largely. When the Supreme Court of India decriminalized homosexuality back in 2018, We did not see protests on the road. We did not see conservative groups forcing the Supreme Court to withdraw its judgment. Probably we have done a decent job in making people realize the constitutional morality, and that's why the Constitution of India survives. Does that make sense to everyone? So one of the principles was to make sure that people slowly and gradually start respecting the values given in the Constitution of India. Second thing was, he was extremely concerned about hero worship. He had read enough literature to understand that the best of the Constitution with best of the protective features fail when there is a popular leader, non-biological creature, who comes to the scene, becomes a charismatic leader, and claims to the society that I am your destiny maker. Whenever that happens, all the constitutions fail, because rather than focusing on the constitution, people lay all their faith in one leader, one person. And as soon as that happens, all of this becomes useless. What he was hinting towards was the national movement, freedom struggle created so many heroes that he was worried some of them might become dictators. This is what happened in rest of the parts of the world. And it was because of the forewarning of Ambedkar that was taken very seriously by Nehru. Although he was extremely popular, he never misused his popularity against the constitution. But look at how Ambedkar's warning came true, not on Nehru, but on his daughter. When Indira Gandhi became popular with the slogan, India is Indira and Indira is India, she was able to put aside the constitution on one hand and install her dictatorship. India was under emergency for 6 years. The same constitution existed back then. The same constitutionalism existed back then in 1975. None of it were effective because there was one person who was able to install herself as a hero, a warning that was given 26 years ago by Ambedkar. When you will have hero worship in the society, none of this will mean anything and the constitutions will not survive longer. Is this clear to everyone? Also, he was very critical of the methods discovered, invented by Gandhi, like non-cooperation, civil disobedience. He was like, look at what you have trained your people into. अब क्या हो गया, कोई भी बात नहीं मानो, बच्चों की तरह सड़क पे बैठ जाते हैं. जैसे बच्चे, when you go with the kids and they want some toys, and if their parents don't buy them toys immediately, they will sit wherever they are. कंप्लीटली मतलब बेइज्जती करा देते अपने पेरेंट्स की, राइट? नहीं नहीं मुझे तो ये चाहिए, मुझे तो चाहिए. दिस इज व्हाट यू हैव ट्रेन्ड योर सिटीजंस इनटू. नाउ इमेजिन द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज ऑन द गवर्नमेंट on 27th of January 1950. There are so much expectations on the state of India because you guys have promised so much. तुम्हें आज़ादी के लिए तुमने सब कुछ प्रॉमिस कर दिया है. So it's like, तुम्हें क्या चाहिए सर? हमें लैंड रिफॉर्म चाहिए, दे देंगे. तुम्हें क्या चाहिए सर? लेबर प्रोटेक्शन, दे देंगे. व्हाट डू यू गाइज नीड? ट्राइबल राइट्स, वो भी दे देंगे. अब कल से देना शुरू करो. 27th January, you will not have any excuse. You have the entire power now. You have the majority. You will not be able to provide relief to every section immediately. Now, will you want them to disobey? Do you want them to non-cooperate with the government? But you have trained them. If your demands don't get fulfilled, then you can just gherao a government office. You can put a picket there and you can force the government into your demands. What he wanted to say is that the Constitution of India will come to your rescue without any doubt, but it will take some time. By that time, you will have to train the citizenry to be patient and tolerant the Constitution of India has created enough number of dispute resolution mechanisms. If you feel aggrieved, go to the court. Don't go to the road. If the district court doesn't listen to you, you have high court. If high court doesn't listen to you, you have Supreme Court. If your concern is shared by thousands and lakhs of people, create a political party, contest election, change the laws. Don't follow the path that Gandhi and Nehru have trained you into. That was the means to achieve an end which is not sustainable against our own government. It will make the entire government machinery dysfunctional. So you can see the government, the Ambedkar would completely disapprove of the farmers' protest, NRC CA protest that happened 3-4 years ago, where people from minority community did not want the laws to be changed. Is this making sense to everyone? Okay, so let's start writing down the notes on constitution, constitutional morality, 1-pager notes, so that you can write the mains answer. And then we will discuss democracy. Write the heading Jadhav. Correct. So what Jadhav wants to ask is that, for example, in UK, you do not have a written constitution. Does that mean UK has an unlimited state? The answer is absolutely yes. UK has unlimited government. UK has unlimited parliament, not the government. Their parliament has the entire power. And I did not want to discuss that. So this discussion might lead you to believe that unless and until you have a written constitution which provides for a limited state, and if the society and constitutional values converge, you will not have a peaceful society. But what if the society itself becomes or starts thinking about equality? If the society itself starts thinking about liberty, what if the society itself starts thinking about justice first? You will not need this and you will not need that. So for example, if all of us shun religion and caste today, most of the provisions of the constitution would be useless. If the citizenry is informed and empowered, even if the parliament has all the power, will they be able to misuse that power? No. But because the citizenry is not aware, it takes a UPSC preparation for us to realize the power and function of parliament. So in that kind of a citizenry, you need certain constitutional checks and balances on the power of the government. Does that make sense, Mahesh? Okay. Write down heading Constitution. Shiva. Come again, Shiva. UK Parliament has unlimited power, yes. People, yeah, so people have the power to change the government, that's true. But it is the famous saying about UK Parliament is that they can do anything and everything except make a man a woman and women a man. But that is also not true now because we have technologies for that also. So the power of the parliament in UK is not restricted by any pre-existing convention or superior constitution. So for example, people can change the MPs, but once you have a set of MPs, they can make any law which will be applicable on all the people in UK. Unlike, for example, Indian Parliament, where Indian Parliament does not have the power to make laws on the state list. So the UK Parliament, the Indian Parliament does not have the power to alter the constitution the way it wants to. That is why there is a key distinction between the UK Parliament and Indian Parliament. Does that make sense, Shiva? We will go deeper. We will go deeper into UK and Indian Parliament. Don't worry about it. What were we writing? Constitution? Yeah. Yeah. So a constitution is broadly a set of rules, written or unwritten. A constitution is broadly a set of rules, written or unwritten, that seek to establish duties, powers, and functions of that seek to establish the duties, powers, and functions of various institutions of the government. Various institutions of the government. Comma. Regulate the relationships between them. Regulate relationships between them. And define state and individual association. Define the state and individual association. It should invariably constitute highest law of the land. Constitute highest law of the land. Highlighted by a difficult amendment procedure. Highlighted by a difficult amendment procedure. Yeah. It should invariably constitute highest law of the land, highlighted by difficult amendment procedure. Pavitra, this is not the link. We will share another link for PSIR class. That's okay. So read what we have written once in 1 minute. See if you have any doubt. Okay. Write the next heading. It is widely agreed, change the paragraph. It is widely agreed that one reason for having constitution is the need to restrict the exercise of power. Yeah. It is widely agreed that one reason for having constitution is The need to restrict the exercise of power. As modern states are excessively powerful, as modern states are excessively powerful, and hence the idea is to create a limited state. Ria, another link will be sent. This is a different class. Hence, the idea is to create a limited state known as constitutional state, known as constitutional state, known as constitutional state, in bracket write idea of constitutionalism. More broadly, more broadly, it is said to exist. More broadly, it is said to exist when the state power is appropriately fragmented. When the state power is appropriately fragmented, horizontally through separation of power, and vertically through federal structure. Vertically through federal structure. Ambika, this is not the, yeah, please leave this class. We'll share another link. Also, Bill of Rights creates a limitation on the state. Also, a Bill of Rights creates a limitation on the state where the state is constrained by, where the state is constrained by the rights of the people. Where the state is constrained by the rights of the people. Is this clear to everyone? Please read Constitutionalism in 1 minute and see if you have any doubt. Shivani. Bill of Rights is, for example, hello. Yeah. Yeah. So Bill of Rights is the idea that certain minimum guarantees exist for every individual in the Constitution, which cannot be taken away under any circumstance. So, for example, Shivani, when you apply for, let's say, any government tender, your tender cannot be discriminated on the grounds of your religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth. So the government cannot say just because you're a woman, you are not allowed to file the application. Now, this is the minimum guarantee you have against the actions of the state. Will you be able to do that in China or in North Korea? You will not be able to do that. If they deny you the opportunity to fill up the tender, there is no remedy available for this grievance. But in India, you can directly go to the Supreme Court and you can say that, sir, my application was rejected just because I am a woman or I belong to a particular caste or religion or a region. Does that make sense? So that creates a limited state. The state loses the power to act in a random way. That is a limited state. Shiva? High courts are not the part of the federal structure when we talk about vertical fragmentation of power. So this is horizontal fragmentation into the same level legislature, same level executive, and same level judiciary. That is horizontally, all these three wings have the same hierarchy. Correct? But when we talk about vertical fragmentation, what is the division of the power between the center and the state, which means central legislature and state legislature, central executive and state executive? Judiciary is kept outside of this vertical fragmentation because Supreme Courts and High Courts are a part of one system. The primary feature of the constitutionalism is to create limited state that can be created through various mechanisms. So some constitutions create effective separation of power. For example, America, they have a very effective separation of power. If you are a senator, you can't become president. If you're a president, you can't become a senator. Right? So they have a very strict separation of power. So that is their understanding. Plus they have combined it with fundamental rights there as well. So these two act as an effective check. Then they have federation also. So that is why American constitution works so well, because it has created an extremely limited state. So a combination of 3-4 aspects go into creating a limited state. They may vary from one system to another. Okay, so let's write the last thing. The heading is constitutional morality. The idea that was at the heart of Ambedkar, because according to him, it is the most important factor. determining the survival of the constitution. Yes, Shivani. The idea was at the heart of Ambedkar, constitutional morality. This idea was at the heart of the Ambedkar because, according to him, it is the most important factor determining the survival of the constitution. According to him, according to him, it includes respect to the constitutional values, respect to the constitutional values, comma, tolerance and patience, tolerance and patience, and inherent suspicion, inherent suspicion for hero worship. Is this clear to everyone? Hero worship. तो जब मोदी 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 होता है तो फिर वहां ऊपर अंबेडकर के दिल में दर्द होता है, यार चालू हो गई हीरो वर्शिप फिर से, राइट? क्या हो गया दिव्यांश? दिव्यांश को अपना पास्ट याद आ रहा है, मैंने भी तो ये किया है, कोविड में बर्तन मैंने भी तो बजाए हैं, बालकनी में जाके मैंने बर्तन बजाए हैं. Okay, all right. So the classes will go on something like this, that we will start by first having a look at the PYQs. In most cases, not in all the cases, because in some cases probably they will not make much sense to you. Then we will discuss the Bare Act provision. We will understand beyond Bare Act. We will understand its analytical point. So the preparation for prelims and mains is an integrated whole. So when I will explain FR, I will not just explain the constitutional provisions with FR. We will go beyond that and we will understand all the mains related aspects of fundamental rights. Then we will look at the prelims PYQs. Then we will give you the questions that have already been asked in the mains. Your responsibility is to write them down and send it on the group. It is necessary that you do so. क्योंकि जब आप खुद की बेइज्जती नहीं करवाओगे सबके सामने, तब तक आप improve नहीं करोगे. So later on when we'll give you the mains test series, that is something that will be uploaded on the portal, but day-to-day class answer writing will be submitted on the WhatsApp group. We have seen all those people who follow this, they get selected as soon as possible. But people who are like, हाँ we'll do it later, ठीक है कर लेंगे, फिर वो फाउंडेशन कोर्स खत्म हो जाता है और वो किसी यूज़ का भी नहीं रहता. ठीक है? So make sure that you do that. When it comes to the book list, I want you to go on Google and type COI PDF. You will see a lot of the search results, out of which you will see Ministry of Law and Justice, Department of Law and Justice portal. Please go to that portal. Just type COI PDF. Then you will see Constitution of India in multiple languages, right? In Tamil, in Hindi, in Marathi. Download COI English version. Divyansh. हाँ, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ लेजिस्लेटिव, हाँ, वही. तुम्हें एक लिस्ट दिख रही होगी, उसमें से इंग्लिश वाला वर्जन खोलो. Has any one of you reached to the English version? Yeah. Can you, yeah, Jadav, can you share the link on the group so that all of us can see if we are talking about the same text? Acha, I'm talking about the link. Yeah, okay. No, so we have that text already. Yeah. So this is the Constitution of India text. This is the PDF that we are going to follow. Although what I will do is that I will show the screenshots of each and every article on the PPT, and I will explain it here itself, all the basic provisions of the Constitution. But it is very, very important that you have this PDF downloaded on your phone. There is no need for us to take the printout of this 400 pages document. We are just going to refer to the PDF. Is this clear to everyone? Yeah. So when I refer, let's say article 15 clause 4, so you have to go to the article 15 clause 4. Before starting polity, I will make all these terms clear. What is a part, what is an article, what is a proviso, correct, what is an explanation, so that when I refer something, you immediately know where to look for in the Constitution PDF. So this is going to be our only resource. Apart from that, if you have Lakshmikant, that's good. Otherwise, we will give you everything that is needed. That will be sufficient for prelims as well as mains examination. Okay? Is this clear to everyone? So tomorrow you have geography orientation. Vaibhav Sir is going to talk about how he's going to take geography. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me. Anyone? No? No doubts? Okay. Zero doubts indicate either of the two scenarios. Either you have understood everything or you have understood nothing. So I hope it's the earlier one, not the later one. Yeah. Okay then. Bye bye. Yeah. हम इसको वापस से करेंगे। मतलब आइडिया ये था कि जब हमने कोई देखा हुआ टर्म आता है तो फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन का आंसर which statement about democracy is supported by the most? Democracy requires military rule, election alone guarantee democracy, freedom of speech unnecessary, opposition party should be suppressed. You have to choose the most appropriate answer. We are going to come back to democracy. I want to so when we will start the polity, we'll discuss democracy anyways. Well, we'll see more questions like this. So in this, you have to choose one that is least incorrect, because all of them are incorrect. Democracy does not requires military rule. Elections are not the only guarantee in democracy. Freedom of expression is not unnecessary. Opposition parties should not be suppressed. Which one is the least incorrect? Is elections all alone guarantee democracy? Shivani? 9 to 12. Okay then. Bye bye. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, daily 3 hours of classes on weekdays, which means Monday onwards, Friday, not on Saturdays and Sunday initially. Later on, we might want to take classes on Saturday as well, but never on Sundays. Thank you, Roja. Thank you, Roja. Okay then. Bye bye. Bye bye. Take care. Take care.